I'm Judy Adams, 55 years old, and I never imagined my own family could be so cruel. What started as a dream vacation to a private island called Paradise became a nightmare when my parents' sister and her family abandoned my 12-year-old son Tommy and me there. As I watched their boat disappear over the horizon, my mother's final words haunted me. "We're not coming back. Paradise suits you better." Before I share our survival story, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to join our journey of betrayal and resilience. The invitation came on a Tuesday afternoon in early May, completely unexpected. I was grading student artwork in my high school classroom when my phone lit up with my father's name. George Henderson rarely called me, so seeing his name sent an immediate wave of anxiety through my body. "Judith," he said formally, using my full name as always. "Your mother and I are planning a family vacation to a private island next month. Amanda and Scott will be bringing the girls. We've decided you and Thomas should join us." I nearly dropped my phone. In the 15 years since Tommy was born, my parents had shown minimal interest in my son. Our strained relationship stretched back much further to my decision to marry Tommy's father, a struggling musician without the pedigree my wealthy parents demanded. When he abandoned us before Tommy's first birthday, their disappointed "we told you so" hurt more than the divorce itself. "A family vacation," I repeated, wondering if I'd misheard. "Yes, a luxury retreat. 2 weeks on a private island in the Caribbean. Everything's arranged. The island's called Paradise." His tone suggested he was discussing a business transaction rather than a family gathering. "Your mother thinks it's time Thomas got to know his cousins better." Tommy had met his twin cousins Lily and Laura perhaps 5 times in his 12 years. My sister Amanda had crafted a perfect life, marrying Scott Prescott, an investment banker from an old money family, and producing identical twin daughters who excelled at everything from equestrian competitions to violin concertos. Amanda never missed an opportunity to highlight how her life choices were superior to mine. "That's very generous," I managed to say, genuinely surprised. "I'll need to check Tommy's schedule and—" "It's all been decided," my father interrupted. "Eleanor's assistant will email you the details. Pack appropriately. This isn't one of your camping trips." Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat at my desk staring at student watercolors, wondering what prompted this sudden inclusion in family activities. That evening, as Tommy and I ate spaghetti in our small but comfortable dining room, I mentioned the invitation. "Grandpa and Grandma want us to go on vacation with them, and Aunt Amanda's family too." Tommy's eyes widened behind his glasses. Despite their indifference, Tommy had always yearned for a relationship with his grandparents and cousins. Like a real family vacation. His hopeful expression broke my heart. "Yes, sweetheart. 2 weeks on a private island." "Wow, that sounds amazing." His enthusiasm was infectious. "Do you think Lily and Laura will want to hang out with me this time? Maybe we could go swimming or looking for shells." I forced a smile, not wanting to dampen his excitement with my concerns. The twins had never shown interest in their younger cousin before, often whispering and giggling when he tried to join their conversations. "I'm sure they will," I lied, "and there will be plenty of activities for everyone." Tommy jumped from his chair and hugged me. "This is going to be the best vacation ever. Maybe Grandpa will finally teach me to fish like he promised years ago." My father had indeed made such a promise when Tommy was 7 during a rare visit to our house. He never followed through. Over the next few weeks, we prepared for the trip. The detailed itinerary arrived from my mother's assistant, along with a suggested packing list that made my stomach sink. The required wardrobe alone would cost more than a month of my teacher's salary. I dipped into my modest savings to buy Tommy new clothes and a few items for myself that might pass my mother's inspection. I also made sure to pack all of Tommy's medications, his asthma inhaler allergy pills, and the EpiPen he needed for severe reactions. My son's health had always been fragile, another point of criticism from my mother, who blamed his conditions on my poor choice in genetic material. The night before our departure, Tommy could barely sleep from excitement. He'd created a journal specifically for the trip planning to document the great family reunion adventure, as he called it. "Mom, Do you think Grandma will like the bracelet I made her? He asked as I tucked him in. Tommy had spent hours in his art corner crafting a beaded bracelet with blues and greens to match her eyes. It's beautiful, Tommy. She'll love it, I said, praying my mother wouldn't dismiss his heartfelt gift as she had so many times before. And I have so many questions for Grandpa about his business. Maybe he can help me with my future career day presentation. I smoothed his shaggy brown hair. Just be yourself, sweetheart. That's all that matters. As I turned out his light, a sense of foreboding washed over me. Something about this sudden invitation felt wrong, but I pushed the feeling aside. Perhaps my parents were finally ready to embrace Tommy and me. Perhaps this vacation would heal old wounds and create the family bonds my son so desperately wanted. How terribly wrong I was. The journey to paradise began with a first-class flight to a small Caribbean island, followed by a transfer to my father's private yacht. Tommy's eyes grew wide as we approached the gleaming white vessel. "That's Grandpa's boat," he whispered in awe. "Ship," corrected a cool voice behind us. My sister Amanda approached designer sunglasses perched on her perfect nose. "It's a luxury yacht, not a boat, Tommy, but I wouldn't expect Judy to teach you the difference." Her twin daughters flanked her, both wearing identical white sundresses and expressions of bored disdain. "Hi, Aunt Amanda. Hi, Lily. Hi, Laura." Tommy waved enthusiastically. "I'm so excited for our vacation together." The twins exchanged glances and suppressed giggles. "Hi," they said in unison without warmth. Amanda air-kissed my cheeks. "Judy, darling, that outfit is practical, isn't it? I suppose it's the best you could do." Her eyes scanned my carefully chosen sundress, which had cost more than I'd normally spend on a month's worth of clothes. Before I could respond, my parents appeared. My mother, Eleanor, looked decades younger than her 76 years, thanks to regular maintenance, as she called her plastic surgery regimen. My father stood tall and imposing, despite his 78 years, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his linen suit immaculate. "Thomas," my mother acknowledged Tommy with a nod. "You've grown." Tommy stepped forward with the small gift bag containing her bracelet. "Hi, Grandma. I made something for you." "We'll do gifts later," she interrupted, turning to me. "Judith, I see you managed to arrive on time. The crew will take your luggage. Try not to bring sand onto the yacht." The 18-hour journey to paradise was tense and uncomfortable. Scott, Amanda's husband, maintained a veneer of friendliness that never quite reached his eyes. "So Judy's still teaching art to teenagers must be fulfilling." "It is, actually," I responded. "Helping young people discover their creative voice is incredibly rewarding." He nodded dismissively. "Not quite as rewarding as closing the Peterson merger last quarter, but we all have our little victories." Tommy tried repeatedly to engage with his cousins, showing them his journal and asking about their interests. They responded with one-word answers before returning to their phones and taking selfies. My father spent most of the journey in the yacht study, emerging only for dinner, where he questioned Tommy about his grades and extracurricular activities. "B+ in math. You should be aiming higher." He frowned when Tommy proudly shared his recent report card. "The twins have never received anything lower than an A. Isn't that right, girls?" Lily and Laura nodded smugly. "We're both taking advanced calculus next year," one of them said. I still couldn't tell them apart. "Tommy excels in art and science," I interjected. "His marine biology project won first place in the district science fair." "Art isn't going to pay the bills, Judith," my mother said with a thin smile. "Unless Thomas plans to live on a teacher's salary like his mother." Tommy's shoulders slumped slightly, but he rallied. "Actually, Grandma, I'd like to be a marine biologist. That's why I'm so excited about this island trip." "At least the boy has some practical ambition," my father muttered, the closest thing to approval I'd heard from him in years. Paradise appeared on the horizon the next morning, a lush green jewel surrounded by white sand beaches and crystal blue water. The island was privately owned by a business associate of my father's, who had offered its use complete with a small staff who would remain on the other side of the island, available via radio if needed. Our accommodations consisted of a main villa, where my parents would stay with separate smaller bungalows for Amanda's family, and Tommy and me. The property was stunning with infinity pools overlooking the ocean, outdoor dining areas, and pristine beaches. "This is amazing," Tommy gasped as we explored our bungalow. "Mom, look at the view." I had to admit the setting was breathtaking. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps the beautiful surroundings would soften everyone's attitudes. That hope died at dinner the first night. We gathered on the main villa's terrace for a lavish meal prepared by the island's chef. Tommy had carefully chosen his nicest new outfit and combed his usually messy hair. He carried my mother's gift, determined to present it to her. As cocktails were served, fruit juice for Tommy and the twins, my son approached Eleanor. "Grandma, I made this for you," he said, offering the small package. With reluctant hands, she opened it and held up the beaded bracelet. "How creative," she said, not placing it on her wrist, but returning it to the bag. "I'll add it to my collection." Tommy's face fell slightly, but he persisted. "The blue and green beads match your eyes. I made it myself." "Yes, that's evident," she replied. "Thank you, Thomas." The conversation turned to Amanda and Scott's recent vacation to the Amalfi Coast, the twins' achievements in their exclusive private school, and my father's latest business acquisition. Tommy and I might as well have been invisible. When the chef asked about dietary restrictions, I mentioned Tommy's allergies. "He can't have shellfish, and we need to be careful with nuts." My mother sighed dramatically. "Such a fragile child. No one in our family had allergies before your generation, Judith." "Medical science has advanced, Mother. Allergies weren't diagnosed as readily in your day." "Or perhaps it's all those strange art supplies you exposed him to as an infant," she suggested. "All those chemicals." I bit my tongue, not wanting to create conflict on our first night. After dinner, as Tommy and I walked back to our bungalow, I overheard my mother's voice drifting from the main villa's terrace. "She looks older than 55, doesn't she? No effort whatsoever with her appearance. And the boy is so awkward, nothing like our girls." Tommy didn't seem to hear, busy pointing out constellations in the clear night sky. I swallowed my hurt and focused on his excitement instead. "Can we go explore the beach tomorrow, Mom? Maybe collect shells or look for tide pools?" "Of course, sweetheart. That sounds perfect." Back in our bungalow, as Tommy prepared for bed, he asked quietly, "Do you think Grandma liked my bracelet? She didn't put it on." I sat beside him on the bed. "Your grandmother has a different way of showing appreciation. The bracelet was beautiful and thoughtful." He nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Maybe tomorrow will be better," he said, with the resilience that continually amazed me. "I'm sure it will," I agreed, wondering how many more times my son's heart would be bruised before this vacation ended. I had no idea that broken hearts would soon be the least of our worries. The second day on Paradise set the tone for what followed. At breakfast, Amanda announced that the family would be taking a boat tour around the island, followed by snorkeling at a nearby reef. "Tommy has asthma," I reminded them. "Snorkeling might be difficult for him." "Oh, that's right," Amanda said with exaggerated concern. "Well, you two can just stay behind then. We wouldn't want to risk Thomas having an episode." "I can still go on the boat tour," Tommy suggested hopefully, "even if I can't snorkel." Scott shook his head. "The boat's rather small, actually. Better if you sit this one out, sport. Maybe next time." Tommy's face fell, but he nodded bravely. "Okay, Uncle Scott. Have fun." After they departed, Tommy tried to hide his disappointment. "That's okay, Mom. We can have our own adventure." We spent the morning exploring the shoreline near our bungalow, discovering colorful shells and interesting tide pools. Tommy's natural curiosity and resilience amazed me, traits he certainly hadn't inherited from his absent father or my cold family. This pattern repeated throughout the following days. The family activities somehow never accommodated Tommy's needs or interests. When they went hiking to the island's highest point, they claimed the trail was too strenuous for Tommy. When they planned a fishing excursion, they forgot to wake us. Each exclusion was wrapped in paper-thin excuses that Tommy accepted with increasingly forced smiles. I watched my son's initial excitement fade day by day, replaced by quiet resignation. One afternoon, I returned to our bungalow to find Tommy sitting on his bed journal closed beside him, tears streaming down his face. "Sweetheart, what happened?" I rushed to his side. "I tried to join Lily and Laura at the pool." He sniffled. They said Grandma told them they didn't have to play with me if they didn't want to. That I was only invited because you're their charity case." Fury rose within me. "Tommy, that's absolutely not true. Then why don't they want me around? Why did we even come here if nobody wants us?" His voice broke and my heart along with it. I held him close. "Sometimes people can't see how wonderful others are because they're too focused on themselves. Your cousins and grandparents are missing out on knowing an amazing person." That evening, I confronted my mother while she was alone on the terrace watching the sunset with a glass of wine. "Why did you tell the twins they don't have to include Tommy?" I demanded. She didn't even look surprised at my question. "The girls are at a sensitive age, Judith. They shouldn't be forced to babysit your son." "Babysit? He's their cousin who wants to spend time with them. That's why we're here, isn't it? For family bonding." A thin smile crossed her face. "Is that what you thought? How quaint." "Then why invite us at all?" I asked, frustration building. "Ask your sister," she replied cryptically. This was her idea after all. Before I could question her further, Amanda emerged onto the terrace. "Problem, Judy? You look upset, not enjoying paradise. Why did you suggest inviting us on this trip? Tommy's being deliberately excluded from everything, and the twins told him we're your charity case." Amanda laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. "Oh, Judy, always the victim. Did you really think this was about family bonding? What else would it be about?" She sipped her cocktail before answering. "I thought it was time Tommy understood his place in this family, and time you saw what real success looks like." "Success?" I repeated incredulously. "You think material wealth is the measure of success? Look around you." Amanda gestured to the luxurious surroundings. "This is what choosing correctly looks like. You chose a penniless musician and ended up a struggling single mother. I chose Scott and have everything I could want." "Except kindness," I replied quietly. "Except compassion. Those don't pay for private school tuition or Mediterranean vacations." She smirked. My mother watched our exchange with detached amusement, like a queen observing jesters. "Judith always had romantic notions about love conquering all. Look where that got you, darling." "It got me Tommy," I said firmly, "and he's worth more than everything you have." I walked away before they could respond, shaking with anger and hurt. That night I considered packing our bags and finding a way off the island, but transportation was controlled by my father. We would have to endure until the scheduled departure in 1 week. The following days brought more exclusion and increasingly blatant cruelty. My father criticized everything from Tommy's posture to his interests. My mother made snide comments about my parenting and appearance. The twins escalated from ignoring Tommy to actively mocking him when adults weren't watching. One morning I discovered someone had gone through our belongings. Tommy's journal had been read evident from fingerprints on pages that weren't his and my personal items rearranged. When I confronted the family at lunch, my accusations were met with denials and accusations that I was being paranoid. "Perhaps island life is making you unstable, Judith," my mother suggested with false concern. "You've always been highly strung." That afternoon I took Tommy to a secluded beach on the far side of the island, away from the critical eyes of my family. He relaxed for the first time in days. "Look at these amazing shells, Mom," he called, holding up a perfect spiral conch. "This beach has the best ones." I watched him dart along the shoreline collecting treasures and carefully placing them in a small bag. His resilience humbled me despite the hurt inflicted by his family. He could still find joy in simple pleasures. "Mom," he said suddenly, pausing his collection, "why don't they like us?" The direct question caught me off guard. I sat down on the warm sand, patting the spot beside me. Tommy joined me, his expression serious beyond his 12 years. It's not about us, Tommy. Not really, I began carefully. Some people measure worth by things: money, status, appearance. They can't understand that real value comes from who you are, not what you have. But they're family, he insisted. Aren't families supposed to love each other no matter what? In an ideal world, yes. But sometimes family can be the people who hurt us the most because they know exactly how to do it. I wrapped an arm around his shoulders. The important thing is to know your own worth, regardless of how others treat you. Tommy considered this, drawing patterns in the sand with a shell. I think I understand. It's like in art class when someone criticizes your painting without trying to understand what you were expressing. I smiled at his insightful comparison. Exactly. And just like with art, those who dismiss without understanding miss out on something beautiful. We spent hours on that beach talking more openly than we had in days. Tommy shared how the twins had mocked his asthma inhaler, calling him defective. I admitted how much my parents' disapproval still hurt after all these years. We'll get through this week together, I promised him. And when we go home, we'll remember that our value isn't determined by their opinions. Tommy nodded, resuming his shell collecting with renewed enthusiasm. I'm making a special collection of the best ones, he explained. One perfect shell for each day we survive here. As the sun began to lower in the sky, I checked my watch. We should head back soon for dinner. Can we stay just a little longer? Please, Tommy pleaded. This is the first time I've felt happy since we got here. I couldn't refuse his request. 10 more minutes, I agreed. Find one last perfect shell. He beamed and continued his search, moving farther down the beach. I watched him, filled with a mother's fierce love and protection. Somehow we would endure this vacation and emerge stronger. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a boat engine starting. At first I didn't connect the sound to anything alarming. Boats came and went for various island activities, but something about the timing sent a chill through me. Tommy, I called. I think we should go now. He looked up from his shell-hunting, confusion on his face. But you said 10 minutes. The engine sound grew louder. I stood scanning the water. Around the curve of the beach, my father's yacht was moving away from the island's main dock. A cold realization washed over me. Tommy, come quickly. Understanding my urgency. Tommy grabbed his shell collection and ran toward me. Together we raced along the beach toward the departing vessel. Wait! I screamed, waving frantically. Where are you going? The yacht continued moving, but slowed slightly. I could see figures on the deck now. My parents, Amanda and Scott, the twins, taking photos with their phones. Stop! We're still here, I shouted, breathless from running. The yacht paused. My mother appeared at the railing, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not the cruel smirk on her lips. Mom, what are you doing? I called out, Tommy now beside me, panting heavily. We're not coming back, Judith, she called, her voice carrying clearly across the water. Paradise suits you better. What? I couldn't comprehend her words initially. This isn't funny. Tommy and I are still on the island. We know my father's voice now. This was the plan all along. Tommy clutched my hand, his breathing becoming labored from exertion and stress. Mom, what's happening? I couldn't answer him. Shock rendered me momentarily speechless. You never fit in with this family, Judith, my mother continued. Neither does your defective son. Consider this a favor. You always loved nature and simplicity. Now you can have all the simplicity you want. You can't do this, I screamed, finding my voice. This is criminal. Tommy has asthma. He needs his medication. You have his inhaler, Amanda called out, laughing. Always the prepared mother, aren't you? Besides, the staff will find you. Eventually. They're on vacation themselves for the next week. Daddy's treat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Scott. I appealed to my brother-in-law, who at least looked uncomfortable. You can't agree to this. This is insane. He turned away, unable to meet my eyes. The twins were actually taking selfies with the island in the background, laughing. Consider it a life lesson, Judith. my mother called as the yacht began moving again. Perhaps when you're rescued, you'll finally appreciate the value of making proper choices. No! I screamed, running into the shallows. You can't leave us here. This is criminal. You'll go to jail for this. But the yacht accelerated, my family's faces growing smaller as they headed toward the horizon. The last thing I saw clearly was the twins waving mockingly. Beside me, Tommy's breathing became increasingly labored. The beginnings of an asthma attack triggered by stress and exertion. "Mom," he wheezed, clutching my arm. "I can't breathe right." Panic momentarily forgotten, I switched to crisis mode. "Your inhaler. We need your inhaler." I frantically searched our beach bag, thanking whatever instinct had made me pack it that morning. The blue rescue inhaler was there, and I helped Tommy use it, coaching him through slow, controlled breaths. "Deep breaths, sweetheart. That's it. Nice and slow." As his breathing stabilized, the full horror of our situation crashed down upon me. We were alone on a private island. The staff was gone. No one knew we had been abandoned. No one would be looking for us. My family had left us to die. The realization that we had been deliberately abandoned hit me like a physical blow. As Tommy's breathing stabilized, I struggled to maintain my composure, knowing my son needed me to be strong now more than ever. "Mom, they left us on purpose." Tommy's voice was small, still wheezy from his asthma attack. I knelt before him on the beach, hands on his shoulders. "Yes, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay. I promise you that." Why would they do that? Why would anyone do that to their family? His eyes, so like mine, filled with tears of confusion and hurt. I had no adequate answer. "Some people are broken inside, Tommy. They do terrible things because they're empty and cruel." I pulled him into a tight hug. "But that has nothing to do with you. You are perfect exactly as you are." For several minutes, we just held each other on that beach, the reality of our situation settling around us like the approaching darkness. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in ironically beautiful shades of pink and orange. "We need to think practically now," I finally said, forcing strength into my voice. "Let's take inventory of what we have with us." Our beach bag contained 2 water bottles, sunscreen, Tommy's inhaler, his allergy medication, my cell phone with no signal, as I'd already discovered days ago, his shell collection, a beach towel, and a small first aid kit I always carried. Not much to survive on. I admitted more to myself than to Tommy. Tommy looked up at me with surprising determination. "But we're not staying on this beach, right? We'll go back to the bungalow. Our stuff is there." His practical suggestion snapped me back to reality. "You're absolutely right. Our luggage is at the bungalow. That's our first step." We gathered our meager belongings and began the long walk back around the island to the compound of luxury buildings that had been our prison for the past week. As we walked, I tried to formulate a plan, mentally cataloging what resources we might have. "Mom," Tommy said, suddenly stopping in his tracks, "what if they took our stuff with them?" The thought hadn't occurred to me, and it sent a fresh wave of panic through my chest. "They wouldn't have had time," I reasoned, trying to convince myself as much as him. "They didn't expect us to see them leaving." Night was falling by the time we reached the compound. The main villa and bungalows stood eerily silent, the usual staff nowhere to be seen. Our footsteps echoed on the stone pathways as we made our way to our bungalow. I hesitated before opening the door, preparing myself for the worst. To my immense relief, our luggage remained inside, apparently untouched, since we'd left that morning. "See? Our stuff is still here," I said with forced cheerfulness. Tommy rushed to his suitcase, checking his special medication bag. "My extra inhaler is still here too, and my EpiPen." The discovery of these essential items lifted a weight from my shoulders. At least Tommy's immediate medical needs were covered. A quick exploration of the bungalow revealed that the electricity was still working. The island had its own generator system, and there was running water. Small mercies, but significant ones. "Let's check the kitchen in the main villa," I suggested. "We need to know what food resources we have." The luxurious kitchen was well stocked with enough non-perishable items to last a couple of weeks if we were careful. The refrigerator and freezer contained additional supplies that would be good for several days. "We won't starve immediately," I told Tommy as we took inventory. "And we have clean water." "How long until someone comes to the island?" Tommy asked the practical question, cutting to the heart of our situation. I considered lying to protect him, but decided honesty was essential. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Your grandfather said the staff was given a week off. But surely someone checks on the island regularly." Tommy nodded, absorbing this information with remarkable composure. "So we might need to survive for a week, maybe longer." "Yes," I admitted. "But we have shelter, food, water, and your medication. Those are the essentials." We returned to our bungalow with supplies for the night, some fruit bread and bottles of water. Exhausted by the day's emotional trauma, Tommy fell asleep quickly despite the circumstances. I sat on the patio of our bungalow staring at the star-filled sky, allowing myself a moment of pure, unadulterated rage. How dare they do this to an innocent child? What kind of monsters had my family become? Or had they always been this way, and I'd refused to see it? Sleep eluded me that night as I alternated between fury and fear, making lists and plans for our survival. By dawn, I had a strategy and a renewed determination. We would not merely survive this betrayal, we would overcome it. I woke Tommy with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Good morning, sweetheart. We have work to do today." He blinked sleepily, then sat bolt upright as memory rushed back. "They really left us, didn't they? I thought maybe I dreamed it." "They did," I confirmed. "But we're going to be okay. I promise you that." After a simple breakfast, we began a more thorough exploration of our surroundings. The compound included the main villa, 3 bungalows, a pool area, and various amenities. Beyond that, the island stretched approximately 3 miles long and 2 miles wide, according to a framed map in the main villa. "We should look for a radio or satellite phone," Tommy suggested. "Rich people always have ways to communicate." His logic was sound. We searched the main villa thoroughly and eventually discovered a maritime radio in my father's study. My hopes soared momentarily until I tried to operate it and found it had been deliberately disabled, wires cut, and components removed. "They really thought of everything," I whispered, feeling sick. "What about the staff buildings?" Tommy asked. "The people who work here must have their own place." Again, his practical thinking amazed me. Following the service paths behind the main compound, we discovered the staff quarters on the eastern side of the island, simple but comfortable buildings, currently empty of people, but containing valuable resources. Most importantly, we found a storage building with tools, emergency supplies, and a small motorboat, which had been carefully disabled, the engine parts removed, and fuel drained. "They really didn't want us to leave," Tommy observed quietly. "No, they didn't." I agreed, unable to shield him from this truth. We spent that first full day taking stock of our resources and establishing a base in our bungalow. I gathered all the medications and first aid supplies I could find and centralized our food resources. Tommy, showing remarkable adaptability, began a project of his own, creating a stone calendar on the beach to track days. "If we have to wait for rescue, we should know how long we've been here," he explained, arranging stones in rows. "I'll move 1 stone each morning." That night, as we ate a simple dinner on our bungalow patio, Tommy asked the question I'd been dreading. "What if no one comes for us, Mom?" I set down my fork and looked directly into his worried eyes. "Someone will come, Tommy. This island is too valuable to be left unchecked for long. And when we're rescued, your grandparents and Aunt Amanda will face serious legal consequences for what they've done." "But what if it takes a really long time?" he persisted. "Then we survive until that happens," I said firmly. "We have shelter, food, water, and your medication will last at least a month. By then, someone will have checked on this place." Tommy nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "We should signal any boats we see. Maybe we could make a flag or something." "That's an excellent idea. We'll start on that tomorrow." As the days passed, we established routines that gave structure to our unexpected island life. Mornings were for essential tasks, checking our water catchment systems, improvised from plastic sheets and containers, maintaining our growing collection of signal flags, positioned at key points around the island, and moving one stone on Tommy's calendar. We rationed the food carefully, supplementing with coconuts from the palm trees and fish I managed to catch, using improvised tools and techniques remembered from childhood camping trips. To my surprise, Tommy proved to be an excellent fisher once I taught him the basics. "Mom, I got another one," he called excitedly on our fifth day, pulling a decent-sized fish from the shallow waters of a tidal pool he'd cleverly blocked with stones during high tide. "That's amazing, Tommy. You're a natural provider." I praised him, genuinely impressed with his ingenuity. His proud smile was worth all the hardship we were enduring. Despite everything I was witnessing my son grow stronger and more confident each day. The nights were harder. Without the distractions of survival tasks, dark thoughts crowded in. I worried constantly about Tommy's asthma medication. We had enough for about 3 weeks if used sparingly. But what then? The twins had called him defective, but they had no idea how strong he really was, adapting to our circumstances with courage that humbled me. A week into our abandonment, we made a significant discovery. While exploring the far northern point of the island, we found an old emergency supply box half buried in the sand, likely left by previous visitors or caretakers. It contained waterproof matches, a solar-powered emergency radio, unfortunately too weak to reach the mainland, but potentially useful for nearby boats, a knife, and some fishing line and hooks. "It's like a treasure chest," Tommy exclaimed carefully, laying out our finds. "This will make things much easier." I agreed, especially relieved about the matches, which would allow us to cook more efficiently and maintain a signal fire. That night, using the knife to prepare our fish dinner, Tommy suddenly said, "I don't miss them, you know." "Who, sweetheart?" "Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Amanda, Uncle Scott, the twins. I thought I wanted them to like me, but now I don't care if they ever do." He looked up at me, his expression serious beyond his years. "They're not good people, are they, Mom?" "No," I said simply. "They're not." "Then I'm glad it's just us," he declared. "We're better off without them." His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but from a profound realization. He was right. We were better off without the toxic influence of my family, even if our current circumstances were dire. As days turned into weeks, we developed increasingly sophisticated survival systems. We created a more permanent shelter on the beach, using materials from the staff quarters, positioning it for optimal visibility to passing ships. We established multiple signal fires ready to be lit at a moment's notice. We even created a small garden using seeds from fruits in the kitchen. Tommy's stone calendar showed 18 marks when our lives changed again. We were on the western beach that morning, Tommy searching for shells to add to his growing collection, no longer just souvenirs, but practical tools for our island life, when he suddenly froze, staring out to sea. "Mom," he whispered, pointing with a trembling finger. Is that a boat?" I followed his gaze and felt my heart leap. A small fishing vessel was visible on the horizon, not heading toward the island, but close enough that a signal might be seen. "The fire!" I gasped. "We need to light the signal fire." We raced to the nearest prepared fire pile, my hands shaking as I struck one of our precious matches. The dry wood caught quickly, and soon black smoke was billowing into the clear blue sky. "The flag, too." Tommy remembered running to hoist our largest distress flag, a bedsheet on which we'd painted "Help" with juice from island berries. For 30 agonizing minutes, we waved, shouted, and tended the fire, uncertain if the distant boat had seen our signals. Then, miraculously, it changed course, turning toward the island. Tommy and I held each other, crying and laughing simultaneously as the fishing boat grew larger on the horizon. When it was close enough that we could see figures waving back at us, Tommy turned to me with shining eyes. "We did it, Mom. We survived." The fishing boat contained 3 local fishermen who were stunned to find us on the supposedly empty private island. In halting English mixed with their native dialect, they explained they didn't usually come this way, but had been following an unusual school of fish. Using my rusty Spanish and a lot of gesturing, I explained our situation, that we had been deliberately abandoned. Their expressions darkened with anger as they understood what had happened to us. "Bad people," the oldest fisherman said firmly. "Very bad. We help you now." They radioed the mainland and transported us to their small fishing village, where we were received with kindness that stood in stark contrast to my family's cruelty. The local doctor examined Tommy, ensuring his asthma hadn't worsened from our ordeal. The village teacher, who spoke excellent English, helped us contact authorities. The story of our abandonment spread quickly. By the time we reached the main island, and proper authorities, reporters were already gathering. The narrative was irresistible: wealthy family abandons mother and asthmatic child on deserted island. Headlines screamed outrage, and social media exploded with condemnation of my family. Police met us at the hospital, where Tommy and I were being checked for dehydration and other effects of our 18 days on Paradise. The officers were grim-faced as they took our statements. "Your family claimed you chose to stay on the island for an extended period," one officer explained. "They told the staff they'd sent another boat for you." "That's a lie," I said firmly. "They disabled the radio and the boat. This was planned." "We believe you, Ms. Adams. Arrest warrants have already been issued." The images of my parents, sister, and brother-in-law being led away in handcuffs made international news. The twins, as minors, weren't arrested, but were placed in temporary custody, while their parents faced charges of attempted murder, child endangerment, and abandonment. My father's business associates distanced themselves immediately. My mother's social circle disintegrated. Amanda and Scott's perfect world crumbled as their assets were frozen, pending investigation. Through it all, Tommy remained remarkably centered. When asked by a sympathetic counselor if he was angry at his family, he considered the question carefully. "I was at first," he admitted. "But mostly I'm sad for them. They have big houses and lots of money, but they don't know how to love anyone. Mom and I have each other. We're the lucky ones." His wisdom humbled me once again. Returning to our modest home after the media frenzy and legal proceedings began was like reaching a true paradise. Our small Arts District bungalow, with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in Tommy's artwork, had never looked more beautiful. Our neighbors and my colleagues from school organized a welcome home gathering, the community rallying around us with genuine care. Tommy's friends came bearing handmade cards and small gifts. My fellow teachers had stocked our refrigerator and pantry. "This is real family," Tommy whispered to me during the gathering, watching our neighbors laughing and sharing food in our backyard. "People who actually care about each other." In the months that followed, we rebuilt our lives with a new perspective. The legal settlement from my family's estate, awarded after they were convicted and sentenced to substantial prison terms, remained mostly untouched in a trust for Tommy's education. We didn't need their money to be happy. I returned to teaching art with renewed passion, starting an after-school program specifically for children dealing with trauma. Tommy flourished in school, his confidence growing as he shared his survival story through a science project on island ecosystems. We kept the shell collection from Paradise displayed in a simple glass bowl on our coffee table. Each shell represented a day of survival, a reminder of our strength and resilience. One evening, as we sat on our porch swing watching fireflies in the garden, Tommy asked, "Do you think we'll ever see them again? After they get out of prison, I mean?" I considered the question seriously. "That would be your choice when you're older, Tommy. If you wanted contact with them, I wouldn't stand in your way." He nodded thoughtfully. "I don't think I will. Not because I'm angry anymore, but because they're not really family. They're just people we happen to be related to." "That's a very wise distinction," I agreed. "Besides," he added with a smile, "we've got real family now. People who choose to love us just as we are." Looking at my remarkable son in the fading light of evening, I felt a peace I'd never known while seeking my parents' approval. The cruel abandonment on Paradise had actually freed us from the toxic bonds that had constrained us for years. "You know what I learned from all this, Mom?" Tommy said, leaning against my shoulder. Home isn't a place. It's not even people. It's where you feel like your true self is accepted. We never needed them to accept us. We just needed to accept ourselves. From the mouth of my 12-year-old came the wisdom I'd spent 55 years trying to learn. Abandonment had taught us both that we were stronger than we knew, more resourceful than we believed, and complete without the approval of those who couldn't appreciate our true worth. Paradise, it turned out, wasn't the island. Paradise was the life we created together, authentic and full of genuine connection. A life where shells collected during our darkest days became treasures, reminding us daily of our resilience and capacity to survive against all odds. Looking back now, nearly a year after our rescue from Paradise Island, I can say with complete honesty that being abandoned by my toxic family was painful, but ultimately freeing. Tommy, now 13, has blossomed without the shadow of their criticism hanging over him. I, at 56, finally stopped seeking validation from people incapable of giving it. The healing process wasn't easy. We both had nightmares in those first months home. Tommy's featured the boat sailing away without us. Mine centered on running out of his asthma medication while still stranded. We sought therapy, something my parents would have considered a weakness, and found it enormously helpful. Trauma changes your brain, our therapist explained. But resilience rewires it again. You're both doing that rewiring every day. Tommy's art became an essential part of his healing. He created a series of paintings depicting our island experience, not focusing on the abandonment, but on our survival methods and the beauty we found despite our circumstances. When his art teacher suggested submitting them to a youth exhibition, Tommy agreed without hesitation. "I want other kids to know they can survive bad things," he explained, "even when adults who should protect them don't." The exhibition opening was attended by local news media drawn by the connection to the now infamous Paradise Island abandonment case. Tommy handled their questions with remarkable poise. "Were you scared on the island?" one reporter asked. "Sometimes," Tommy admitted. "But my mom taught me that being brave doesn't mean not feeling afraid. It means doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared." When asked about his grandparents, an aunt and uncle now serving prison sentences, Tommy simply said, "I hope they learn what really matters in life. It's not money or status. It's how you treat the people you're supposed to love." My son's wisdom continued to humble me. Our community proved to be the family we truly needed. My fellow teachers covered my classes during days when court appearances were necessary. Tommy's friends included him in activities without treating him as a curiosity. Our neighbors checked in regularly, bringing meals or simply offering company. One particularly meaningful gesture came from Maria Gonzalez, mother of Tommy's best friend Carlos. She arrived at our door one Sunday morning with her entire extended family bearing tools and supplies. "We are building you a proper patio garden," she announced. "Everyone needs beauty after hardship." By sunset, our previously plain backyard had been transformed with raised garden beds, a small fountain, and comfortable seating. The entire Gonzalez family stayed for an impromptu cookout, filling our home with laughter and conversation. "This," Tommy whispered to me as we watched Carlos's grandmother teaching his cousins a traditional dance, "is what family is supposed to feel like." He was right. Family wasn't defined by blood or legal ties, but by genuine care and mutual respect. The legal proceedings against my parents' sister and brother-in-law continued for months. The prosecution built a solid case showing premeditation, the disabled radio and boat, the staff being sent away, the deliberate isolation of the island. When it came time for me to testify, I found myself strangely calm, facing them across the courtroom. My mother's surgically preserved face showed no remorse, only annoyance at her circumstances. My father avoided eye contact entirely. Amanda glared as if I were the one who had wronged her. Only Scott showed any sign of regret, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "They're not worth your anger," Tommy told me the night before my testimony. "They're already punishing themselves by being such unhappy people." During my testimony, I didn't focus on vengeance, but on truth, the deliberate cruelty, the careful planning, the willful abandonment of a child with medical needs. The jury's expressions shifted from shock to outrage as evidence mounted. The verdicts and sentences came down exactly as expected, guilty on all counts with substantial prison terms. The family fortune was largely seized for legal fees, fines, and our settlement. The twins were placed with Scott's brother's family, perhaps the only positive outcome, as they might learn different values in that household. As for Tommy and me, we chose to use a small portion of the settlement money to create a foundation supporting children affected by family trauma. The Paradise Resilience Project now funds art therapy programs, wilderness survival camps that build confidence, and support groups for children navigating complex family situations. "We're turning something awful into something good," Tommy explained when interviewed about the foundation. "That's how you beat the bad stuff, you use it to make something better." The majority of the settlement remains in a trust for Tommy's future college education, travel experiences, perhaps a home of his own someday. We live much as we did before in our modest Arts District bungalow, rich in creativity and connection rather than material wealth. On the anniversary of our abandonment, Tommy suggested we have a survival celebration rather than treating it as a somber occasion. "We shouldn't mark the day they left us," he said. "We should celebrate that we saved ourselves." We invited our chosen family neighbors, colleagues, Tommy's friends, the Gonzalez family, for a backyard gathering. Tommy displayed his Paradise paintings and shell collection. I prepared simple dishes inspired by our island resourcefulness. Everyone brought something to share. As twilight fell and fairy lights illuminated our garden, Carlos's grandfather raised his glass in a toast. "To Judy and Tommy," he said in accented English, "who teach us that family is not in the blood, but in the heart, and that the strongest people are not those with money and power, but those with courage and kindness." I watched my son among his friends, laughing and storytelling, completely at ease in his skin. The abandoned, defective child my family had tried to discard had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than they could ever comprehend. Later that night, as Tommy prepared for bed, he brought me a small package wrapped in plain paper. "I made this for you," he said shyly, "for our anniversary." Inside was a beautiful frame made from driftwood collected during beach cleanups with his scout troop. It contained a photograph of us taken on our front porch the day we returned home from Paradise, exhausted but triumphant. Around the frame, Tommy had carefully glued tiny shells, replicas of the ones we'd collected during our abandonment. At the bottom, he'd burned a simple inscription: "The real paradise is where we make it." I hugged him tightly, this remarkable child who had faced abandonment and emerged with wisdom beyond his years. "You know what I think sometimes, Mom?" he whispered against my shoulder. "I think they did us a favor in a weird way. If they hadn't been so awful, we might have spent years trying to please them." "You're right," I agreed. "Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best revelations. We've rebuilt our lives on truth and authentic connection. We've learned that resilience isn't just about surviving hardship, but about thriving because of what hardship teaches you. Most importantly, we've discovered that family isn't defined by obligation or blood, but by choice and love. Paradise wasn't the island. Paradise is the life we've created in the aftermath, honest, connected, and genuinely our own." What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal or discover strength you didn't know you had? Share your story in the comments below. And if our journey touched you in some way, please subscribe to hear more reflections on resilience and hit that like button to help others find our story. Remember, sometimes our deepest wounds lead to our greatest growth. Thank you for listening, and may you find your own version of paradise wherever and whatever that may be.